On April 15th, 2022, in San Francisco, California, a leading online marketplace known as MarketSphere initiated a new artificial intelligence-driven pricing algorithm designed to optimize sales by dynamically adjusting prices based on real-time consumer behavior and inventory levels. This algorithm aimed to enhance user experience and maximize profits for sellers by employing a vast array of historical purchasing data. However, unbeknownst to the team responsible for its deployment, the algorithm was built on biased historical data sets that favored pricing outcomes for specific demographic groups. The initial technical failure occurred shortly after the algorithm's deployment when a misconfiguration in the input parameters caused the system to prioritize historical sales patterns from predominantly higher income zip codes. This inadvertent access vector led to automated pricing adjustments that overlooked the purchasing power and needs of lower income consumers and minority groups. The deviation from equitable pricing was further compounded by a lack of robust oversight and testing protocols that failed to account for potential biases in the training data. Internal auditing procedures were also insufficiently rigorous, allowing the algorithm to operate with a significant process gap that went unnoticed by the development team. As the algorithm began to adjust prices across the platform, the first measurable impact emerged almost immediately. In the weeks following deployment, approximately 30% of sellers reported drastic fluctuations in their sales figures. Analysis revealed that sellers targeting predominantly minority demographics experienced a 40% reduction in sales, while those catering to higher income consumers saw an increase of 25%. The platform's overall sales volume remained stable, masking the underlying economic disparities developing within the marketplace. User engagement metrics showed an initial increase, but this was primarily driven by the artificially lowered prices for select demographics, creating a false sense of success for the company. Internally, the response to these unforeseen changes unfolded slowly. On April 22nd, less than a week after the algorithm's launch, confusion reigned within the organization. A series of urgent internal emails circulated among the product management and data science teams discussing anomalies in sales patterns. Early investigations into the matter revealed initial assumptions that the fluctuations were merely cyclical and part of normal marketplace behavior. However, skepticism grew, and an incident channel was established for tracking concerns raised by sellers. As more feedback filtered in, including reports from the user community about inflated prices for everyday items, management began to recognize the potential severity of the situation. Simultaneously, external signals began to appear as complaints surfaced on social media and customer forums. Users reported instances of arbitrary price increases for common products and expressed dissatisfaction with the platform's pricing fairness. Media outlets picked up on early consumer grievances, leading to minor mentions of possible pricing inequality associated with MarketSphere, though these reports failed to garner widespread attention at this stage. By early May, MarketSphere's internal teams began to scramble for solutions. Meetings featured heated discussions over potential fixes, but many suggestions remained superficial or overly reliant on quick patches that did not address the algorithm's core flaws. Attempts to revert the pricing algorithm were complicated by legacy vendor contracts and technical dependencies that limited the agility of the team to implement changes. Higher-level management proposed a temporary suspension of the algorithm, but concerns about lost revenue during downtime restrained their decision-making process. Meanwhile, the financial impact on sellers grew increasingly severe. Minority-owned businesses reported not only losses in sales, but also struggling relationships with suppliers and stakeholders who had grown wary of partnerships that were becoming untenable under the new pricing structure. As revenue plummeted, cash flow issues manifested, with some sellers unable to fulfill incoming orders while others began filing complaints with consumer protection agencies regarding unfair treatment. Monitoring systems initially set up to track sales performance began returning alarming metrics, alerting the team to patterns of abnormal pricing behavior. Graphs illustrating price volatility revealed disparities across demographic segments, urging data scientists to take a closer look at the algorithm's foundational assumptions. Despite these mounting pressures, the full extent of the algorithm's repercussions had yet to be realized. Discussions regarding deeper investigations into the algorithm's design were initiated among team leads, yet the implications of addressing such systemic issues weighed heavily on both the technical and managerial staff. The fear of potential backlash and reputational harm loomed over the organization, leading to hesitance in approaching necessary and comprehensive fixes. As the crisis evolved, investigations into the algorithm prompted rigorous but partial attempts at rectification. Some team members proposed retraining the algorithm using a broader data set to incorporate diverse consumer behavior and rectify the bias. But a critical dependency on vendor services for the existing infrastructure stymied immediate action. This vendor lock-in meant that any amendments to the algorithm would likely involve extended timelines for assessment and revision, further exacerbating the fallout. The initial weeks of the turmoil marked a turning point for MarketSphere as perceptions within the organization began to reflect a growing awareness of the systemic issues at hand. The longer the algorithm operated without correction, the more entrenched and damaging the economic disparities became. Tension mounted among sellers, and buyer dissatisfaction threatened to escalate further. It all developed into a precarious situation that teetered on the edge of market destabilization, compelling the company to face the ramifications of algorithmic bias in a digital landscape that valued efficiency above equity. As the investigation progressed, discussions over data ethics and marketplace integrity became critical topics of interest, igniting concerns not only within MarketSphere, but across the digital economy at large. What began as a simple pricing adjustment soon revealed the intricate connections between algorithmic decisions and economic viability. The profound implications of overlooking biases in programming laid bare the vulnerabilities of automated systems in online marketplaces, setting the stage for unfolding consequences that would prove far-reaching and consequential for all involved. Thus, as MarketSphere faced mounting pressures from sellers, buyers, and external stakeholders alike, the need for reform and accountability loomed on the horizon, marking the beginning of a tumultuous journey through the complexities of algorithmic responsibility and economic fallout. By late May, despite increased internal pressure for transparency, MarketSphere continued to prioritize short-term revenue over comprehensive solutions. Their attempts to appease frustrated sellers involved temporary fee waivers and public announcements promising to investigate pricing discrepancies. Yet these actions fell short of addressing the critical underlying issues. As trust eroded further, complaints multiplied, with numerous organizations filing legal notices against MarketSphere for economic damages and unfair practices. In early June, pressured by regulatory bodies and consumer advocacy groups, MarketSphere engaged a third-party audit firm to evaluate the pricing algorithm thoroughly. Preliminary findings indicated a systemic bias favoring established sellers over emerging minority-owned businesses, underscoring the algorithm's flawed framework. The audit revealed that over 40% of the impacted sellers experienced at least a 30% decline in sales revenue compared to previous quarters, drawing significant public attention amidst growing controversy. Simultaneously, investigative journalists began to uncover and publish findings from internal chat logs and communications that detailed executives' awareness of the pricing irregularities. As these reports emerged, allegations of negligence and misinformation spread, prompting law enforcement inquiries into potential misconduct and consumer fraud. The media's coverage drew public ire, further amplifying the urgency for substantive action. In response to escalating backlash and legal pressures, MarketSphere's leadership began to implement emergency measures. By the end of June, they formed a crisis management team charged with overhauling the pricing algorithm, committing to a reevaluation of their data sourcing practices. Additionally, executive resignations began, starting with the Chief Technology Officer, who faced scrutiny over the algorithm's implementation. As July progressed, audits and ongoing investigations led to a series of inflammatory headlines that shook consumer confidence. MarketSphere attempted to recover by setting up a fund to support the affected minority-owned businesses, allocating a portion of their marketing budget toward rebranding efforts and public engagement. However, the financial toll was evident, with some data revealing that the marketplace lost over $200 million in sales during the crisis period. By August, additional regulatory scrutiny intensified as authorities issued subpoenas demanding documentation and records related to the algorithm's design and deployment. The company also faced class action lawsuits from sellers who experienced significant losses. The mounting legal and financial setbacks showcased how the initial oversight spiraled into a multifaceted crisis involving various stakeholders, encapsulating the profound risks of unexamined algorithmic governance. By the end of the third quarter of 2023, MarketSphere announced a major restructuring following persistent losses and reputational damage. It culminated in the decision to suspend operations as they reevaluated their entire business model, with a renewed focus on equity in marketplace practices. Although they intended to relaunch with a revised algorithm, the consequences of the summer's events had pervaded the market. On October 15, 2023, MarketSphere officially ceased all operations, declaring bankruptcy, while recognizing the irreversible damage caused by the combination of algorithmic bias and poor corporate governance, marking a significant paradigm shift in the treatment of automated systems within digital marketplaces.